afternoon meeting. At this time, we'll call ourselves to order. And Larry, we'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council. For this afternoon's strategic session, we've got 3 items for your consideration. And if time doesn't permit to hear each of them, I would ask you to please allow us to shift one or more of the unheard topics to the regular agenda of tonight's meeting. First up is a presentation on the results of the Willis Tower Watson pay study. And in a moment, I'll defer to Don for the introductions. Then after that, council's discussion of a firm to perform the needs assessment to evaluate the facilities for usage by fire department, police department, and senior center. And the third item is a 2-man and truck funding source involving a potential budget amendment and fees. And at this point, I'd like to defer to Don for introductions.
Thank you, Larry. Just wanted to recall your memory a little bit. Back in July, council directed us to engage Willis Towers Watson to do a benchmarking and compensation study for the Energy Services Department. We're here tonight to present those findings, provide you with some recommendations on how to implement what the report shows. And with us tonight, we have Kim Avat, Senior Consultant with Willis Towers Watson. She'll be going over the study with you and talking through that, giving you the details of what the study came up with. We also have some folks from Electric Cities, Roy Jones, the Chief Executive Officer of Electric Cities, Matt Schul, the Chief Operating Officer, and Melissa Miranda, the Vice President of Human Resources. They're very interested in this study for statewide purposes, and I just want to say Melissa was with us throughout the study. She was on all the conference calls and meetings with Willis Towers Watson. She was a very valuable resource to us, and we appreciate Electric Cities allowing her to participate with us in this study. As you recall, back in July, we talked about the importance and need to do this benchmarking compensation study. We've been seeing loss of qualified employees for several years. We're going to other places for higher wages. Electric Cities is very interested in this too, because this isn't a problem that's unique to Monroe. It's something that's happening across the state with municipal utilities. Pay ranges are typically lower than the marketplace and throughout North Carolina, and in fact across the nation. Electric utilities are operated by cities are seeing their employees go elsewhere, having great difficulty retaining a qualified workforce. Again, back in July, I mentioned to you some of the issues we were having. We'd lost 9 line technicians to other utilities or contractors. Our chief reason for leaving was higher pay. We lost 2 engineers and an engineering technician, again to other utilities, again for higher pay.
Is this in the past year or last half or when?
That was, the line technicians were in about the last 3 to 4 years.
And how many was that?
9.
9 in the last 3 to 4 years?
Yes, sir. The engineers were all within a year.
What's been within a year?
The engineers and the engineering
engineers.
technicians were all lost in 1 year.
And how many was that?
2 engineers and 1 technician. Since we met in July, we've lost 2 additional line technicians, again going to other utilities or
They actually went to another utility too.
1 went to a utility, 1 went to a contractor, both for higher pay. We've also lost an additional engineer since then, so at this point we've lost 11 of 15 line technicians, 3 engineers, and 1 engineering technician. So again, I just want to emphasize to you the importance of this study, and that not just the importance of the study, but that I think we need to take some action, and hopefully we can take some action tonight to start correcting this ship and get it to the place where we can have a qualified workforce that we can retain. With that, I'd like to invite Kim to come up. Kim Avat again is Senior Consultant with Willis Towers Watson out of their Atlanta office. Kim did the majority of the work on this report, and if I can find the cursor and get this thing pulled up, we'll have her go through the study with you. Once she's completed the study, I'd like to come back and talk with you some about some recommendations for implementation.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. Just a little bit of background. Willis Towers Watson is a consulting firm, and we specialize in total rewards consulting, so compensation and benefits consulting. We work with clients in all industries, all sizes and shapes of clients. So I personally have been in compensation, like broad-based compensation consulting for at least probably 16 years, a little bit more than 16 years. So, and again, I specialize in broad-based versus executive compensation. So what we're going to talk about today is our methodology for the study. We're going to talk about our findings at a high level, and we actually have a lot of detail as well, and then some potential recommendations around new salary grades for this group of positions. So a little bit of background. Don just shared with you that they've been experiencing a lot of turnover. We've done work for electricities. We've done work for other municipalities in North Carolina, and we have heard that as a common theme. One of the issues is that there's new competition. So in addition to the competition you've always had, there's new competition coming into the market as well. So you've always competed with IOUs, but now you have companies like Google that are coming in, and they have needs for positions like linemen. So again, experiencing high levels of turnover. There's also the cost of turnover is something that we need to pay attention to, because there's, in addition to the obvious costs of turnover, like hiring costs, onboarding and training costs, there's other costs as well. So customer service, or when you're always having new employees, customer service may suffer. There's cultural impact, there's morale impact on your employees, and then there's a safety impact as well. So there's a lot of things that create costs associated with turnover, and so it's not a strict raising salaries. Is offset by the fact that you're hopefully lowering your cost of turnover. Okay, so methodology. So when we do compensation benchmarking, we're kind of at the mercy of who participates in surveys, unless you go out and do a custom survey where you pick and choose organizations and ask them to participate. We kind of have to use surveys that people have participated in. So what we try to do is get a broad brush and get as many of the different kinds of competitors. We want to make sure that we're getting your key competitors for talent when we're looking at which surveys to use. So in this particular study, we actually used 6 different surveys. We used Towers Watson. We have our own survey database. So we used we actually have 2 databases. We are a merged company, so we've had 2 different surveys that we conducted each company, and so we actually have running them, and they have different participants. We used the EPDIS, Energy Technical Craft and Clerical Survey. Again, they specialize in energy services. We used the CAI Wage and Salary Survey, which is North Carolina focused. We used APPA, Public Power Survey, and we used an ERI, National Utility Survey. So in that, we're covering IOUs, we're covering co-ops. We have a few municipalities, not many, and then broader companies that would participate in any kind of energy services survey.
What other municipalities are you using besides just Monroe?
So I think CAI and ERI has some municipalities in them, but again, there's not a lot of municipalities, and really that was part of the point of this, was that we don't just compete with municipalities, we compete with all of the other organizations as well for talents. We want to make sure that we're covering all industries.
Do you just do electrical, or do you do other surveys in other areas also?
We do surveys and we have, yeah, general industry surveys. We do all kinds of different surveys, our organization.
So do you usually look at surveys with the private sector, or do you use public sector on your other surveys?
Yeah. When you say on our
When you're comparing the salaries, are you just going from the public sector to the private sector, or are you using in all of your surveys, in the other surveys that you do?
So, are you saying, you mean
Salary surveys.
salary surveys? Do we include public sector and private sector? Is that your question?
Yes.
Yes.
So you do that if you do, example for police officers, how do you would just go to corporate security as well as police as municipalities? Is that how you do that works?
If we were to do police officers, yeah, we would look at different surveys. So we've done that in the past. We've done surveys of security companies, and we use security, so, companies that would include security officers, and we use companies that would include police officers, surveys that would include police officers. Okay. So when we pull data at the 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile, and for base salaries. And then all surveys are published at different times. So in order to bring them all to a common date, we age data based on the going market merit increase budgets. So we age them all to October 1st of 2016 pay levels. So they're all at the same point in time. Okay, comparator group. So we really focused on energy services, utility industry surveys for this particular study. Again, it includes investor-owned as well as public power utilities, since City of Monroe is competing for talent with all of those types of organizations. As far as geography, we used Southeastern data when it was available. In some cases, some surveys don't have specifically Southeastern data for certain jobs, so we would use national data. We also looked at the geographic cost of labor differential between the City of Monroe and national average, and we found on average it's 2% below national average. So if we ever used national average, we reduced it by 2%, the data. And then for positions at this level, below the executive, we generally pull total sample. We don't try to size adjust. So what that means is when we are looking at executive data, we will regress data or size adjust data based on the size of the organization. But below directors and below, we find that there's not as much correlation between the size of the organization and pay. So it's really for large organizations, they have just more of those positions generally. So we don't size adjust data at the director and below level. So all of this represents total sample data. Okay? Okay, so this is the findings. So on average, we found that City of Monroe positions are 17% below the median of this market. So again, the market being all of these different types of organizations. And that's base salaries. So actual difference in total cash compensation is probably even a little bit bigger, because in many of the organizations, the IOUs, they also are eligible for annual incentives. And generally for the national energy services, we show that below $100,000, it's somewhere between the 5 and 9% of base salary range. And above $100,000, between $100,000 and $140,000, it's generally about 10 to 15% of base salary that they're eligible for as a target incentive. Okay? And then when we look at the positions, how many are within? So that's 17% is on average. But how many positions? 29%, or 7 of the 24 positions were kind of within the salary, the competitive market, and we consider what's competitive is to be about 15% plus or minus of the median of the market. So the majority of the positions were below market. We call that here positions that were really significantly below, the 50% or more below the market median. So you can see the list. We don't have to go through them line by line, but there's some of them are significantly below the median of the market. So if you look at the ES, general manager, engineering, transmission and maintenance. It's 48% below the market median. So,
That's it, right?
on page 7. You can see that the linemen, there's gas technicians, all of these are significantly below the market median. And then, I don't know that we want to get into the data, but you can see on pages 8 and 9, what these tables show is the position, the average incumbent base pay for City of Monroe, and then you've got your market 25th, 50th, and 75th percentiles represented, and then the variance between City of Monroe and each one of those summary statistics. Okay, so that's pages 8 and 9. So based on all of that information, what we thought we would do instead of try and move positions around within the current structure, city structure, that it probably made sense to just create a separate salary structure for these positions in the energy services area. So we've created a salary structure, and this is what you see is it's basically a traditional, we call it a traditional salary structure. You can see here on the right column, the spread. That's the spread from the minimum to the maximum of the salary range. Generally, what we see and what's best practice is that that spread gets a little higher as you go up in the organization, so you have more room in a salary grade to grow. Because in theory, once you move up farther and farther, you don't have as many opportunities for promotion, and the variance in market data is bigger at higher levels than it is at lower levels.
All these figures where you got the minuses below market, whatever. Is this, for instance, line of, for instance, 19% minus in the deficit? Is this 19%, is that off the medium? Is that off the medium range or low or high range?
Median. That's the
From
median of the
medium.
market.
Okay. And you may have said that, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, so and the way we put positions in here, actually there was a little bit of an iterative process. Dawn and I went through and we put them into this new salary structure we developed fairly conservatively. What that means is we looked at the market median, and we tried to make the market median fall kind of at or above the midpoint, so somewhere between the midpoint and the max. In some cases, where we place the jobs were even a little bit above the maximum. So what that means is the market data, say for instance in grade 6, if the market data is 75, we would put it in grade 6. That means that we're placing the midpoint at the high end of the range, and that's really a more conservative approach. In some cases, we also looked at internal equity and whether or not they're a position that might be experiencing high turnover. If they weren't a position that was experiencing high turnover and they weren't necessarily mission critical, then we may have erred on the side of having them in a lower range that maybe market data would have suggested they go into.
So on grade 14, I guess that is the manager's salary. So you're going to a maximum of what, 172?
Mm-hmm.
So that's more than our city manager and our city attorney makes.
That's the maximum of that range, right? So the midpoint of the range is 132.8.
So maybe what we need to do is to get you to do a survey about everybody in the city, and then that way it would be so high, the city of Monroe will just go right out of business. That's what it looks like to me. We're comparing private to public, and whenever we do that, it's always comes out pretty much the same. And it's not just in energy services. I understand that there's an issue with the linemen, but if we start going through all of that, the whole department is going to really knock us all out of sync with what we have in the city. Like I said, if we start and we do with the director, we're pricing ourselves right out of business.
Mm-hmm. And that role, that director role, it was really not matched to investor-owned utilities. That role was managed to a general manager. So the description is responsible for management, staffing, administration, and operation of utility, responsible for overall relations between governing boards, employees, customers, and general public, reports to elected officials or appointed governing body responsible for governing a utility. So that one really is more in line and we didn't really, it was hard to match that to an investor-owned utility.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so, and then this just shows actually where we have made recommendations for matching or slotting jobs into the structure based on the market data. So again, you can see in most cases, the market median is at the high end of the range. So we're really targeting the market median, the high end of your salary range, not, oops, must be a touch screen, not the midpoint of the range. There's a couple of, you'll see a couple of positions where it's more targeted towards the midpoint, but for the most part. So for instance, here for the Director of Energy Services, the market median is 170. That's the high end of the range.
How many across the state makes that?
How many across the state makes that?
I mean, I know you don't know exactly, I wouldn't think you know exactly, but what would be your,
Well, that's the median, so, right? So some make more and some make less. The 170 is the median, so you're gonna have, depending on the sample, half make more than 170, half make less than 170. Okay. So, and then the rest of your report really is just the matches and how we match the jobs. It just shows, the prevailing match. It doesn't show every single match for every survey. Any questions?
So that page 14 is where you came up with that definition of a Director of Energy Services.
That's right.
Okay.
Is that what you're reading? Is the definition from the survey we matched it to?
okay. Any questions? Lady? Thank you, ma'am. Good job, good report. Comment, question from the council?
I've got some follow-up, Mayor.
Okay, come on, Dr. Dodd.
Following the report, I wanted to just talk with you some about my recommendations, how we go forward with the implementation of this. What I'd like to recommend is first that for any employee that has a medium, a midpoint in the new pay range that's suggested, that's higher than the current midpoint, but for those employees, we would adjust their pay to go into the new pay plan. We would make this effective at the end of December. And the way we would adjust the pay is we'd take their current pay, divide it by the current midpoint, multiply it by the new midpoint. That would move them into the same relationship in the new pay plan as they are in the old pay plan.
Excuse me, Don, are you talking about the midpoint that you currently have or the midpoint that Springstead did?
Current midpoint that's in the current pay plan that I don't think we're actually using in Springstead.
Okay, so we haven't implemented that in everywhere because Springstead?
It's in a 3-year phase, so we've only done the first part.
So we're in the first year?
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay.
For employees that, again, have a higher midpoint in the new plan versus the old plan, that are on probation, we just recommend that when they end their probation, that either get the normal 5% increase or move to the new pay plan with the same type formula. if that resulted in a higher pay. Whichever one resulted in the higher pay is where we move it to. I want to talk about excuse me, budget impacts for this. If we implemented this as I'm recommending, the electric fund would need to see an increase in $131,000 in this current fiscal year in the wages and benefits items, line items. We are budgeted to return $3,121,000 to fund balance this year. So taking $131,000 out of the $3 million that we intend to return to fund balance, would reduce that to just about $3 million. We would not need any type of rate increase to implement this pay plan.
How about next year? What would it do for next year?
We'll look at that.
You
in
come
just a
in,
second.
okay.
Yes, sir. The natural gas fund, we'd need to increase the wages and benefits $57,000 this fiscal year. Again, the natural gas fund is budgeted to put $1,300,000 into fund balance. Again, this year we would not need a rate increase. It would have no material impact on the current year budget. If we implemented this for an entire year, your question, Mayor, it would take $318,000 to implement it for the electric fund for an entire year. The electric fund has annual revenues currently of over $61 million. We are seeing growth in the just slightly over 1% range, so the growth should produce revenues of $678,000, which again could cover the increase in the pay and benefits. Similarly, in the electric system and the gas system, a full-year implementation of it would cost $128,000. We have $17 million in revenues and a little higher growth in the gas system. So again, the projected revenues from both should be more than sufficient to cover the cost of the pay increases. What I'd like to ask for the action for tonight is, one, that we adopt the pay plan as presented by Willis Towers Watson. That we implement the plan effective the end of December. Again, that the employees that are not on probation would move to that formula. Those that are on probation, at the end of their probation, will either get the 5% increase or move to the pay plan, whichever resulted in a greater pay. I'd recommend that you adopt budget amendment BA 2016-33 to move the funds from fund balance, from the amount that we're supposed to put back in fund balance into the various wage and benefit line items. And for this study to work and be useful to us in years going forward, I suggest that you take action to direct us every year as the budget process is going along, to review the plan, compare it to the market again, make market adjustments if they're needed, and if there are cost of living adjustments necessary to stay within the plan, that be part of the budget process as well. As far as merit plans and things like that, I would say that the energy services would stay with the city. If the city has a merit increase suggested, that would be moved over into the energy services fund, and saying it would just be, this plan would stand alone as its own. It's entirely separate from the existing city plan. We'd look at it every year so that we're not back here again and talking about employees leaving, that we can't retain qualified employees. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have, hear your discussion.
Any questions?
Yes, your recommendation is to, let me make sure I understand this properly. Your recommendation is to enact this midpoint pay, is that correct?
The pay plan, yes.
Yeah,
It has a
midpoint.
minimum, a midpoint, and a maximum. So,
Mayor,
Yes.
And,
I think that really good report, but I think this needs to go to the General Services Committee. I need to digest this stuff, and I think it would be good to let it go there and then come back to the council.
Okay.
I would agree.
I would agree.
That's in the form of a motion.
Yes, it is.
Okay, I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second, Lynn's motion.
I have a second, all in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none, that, we'll go to that committee for a study, come back and bring it back to the council with a recommendation, please. Thank you, Don.
Yes, sir. Thank
And you folks, thank y'all very much. Good job. Appreciate y'all coming down and the work you've done. Do one of them there next time. I'm kidding. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. It's a very good report. Good job presenting. I couldn't come up with that. Well, I did one. Thank y'all very much.
Mayors and members of the City Council have asked Chief Ron to provide brief overview of the basic elements that have gotten us up to this point in terms of whether or not to select a firm to perform the needs assessment, evaluating possible facilities for usage by fire department, police department, and senior center. And so tee up Ron, if you could.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Mayor and Council, it's a pleasure to be before you this afternoon. Just to give you some background on what brought us to this point. A few months ago, the city manager asked a group of staff to look into our facility needs. He actually asked Parks and Recreation Director Tanya Edwards, Police Chief Brian Gilliard, Assistant Manager Brian Bourne, and myself to look at this. And he asked us to look at the needs of the senior center, the police department, the fire department administration, Fire Station 1, and Fire Station 6. So this committee came together. We looked at those needs. We're specifically looking at 3 buildings, 3 existing facilities. One being the existing police department, where the police department and fire administration is located. The other being the existing senior citizen center down on Haines Street. And the other being the Inquirer Journal building that the city purchased. So as we look at those, and I looked at needs of each department, looked at the facilities, we basically developed 2 courses of action, possible courses of action. One being to either move the senior citizen center into the Inquirer Journal building, or the other being to move the fire administration into the Inquirer Journal building. There were a lot of questions that we just simply couldn't answer. We didn't have the technical expertise to answer. So we actually took this report to the Public Safety Committee back in August and discussed it with the Public Safety Committee. And staff's recommendation was that we seek the assistance of a professional architect, a professional architectural firm, to evaluate these existing facilities, evaluate what the needs are, do basically a needs analysis, and then to basically make a recommendation back on what would be the best route to take, to include the needs analysis of the different facilities, the existing buildings, the cost analysis. So when we discussed this with the Public Safety Committee, the committee agreed with that. The Assistant Manager, Brian Bourne, sent out an RFQ, a request for qualifications for architectural firms. We had 2 firms that replied to that, and those 2 firms made a presentation to a joint committee meeting of the General Services Committee and the Public Safety Committee back in October. So both firms made the presentation to the joint committees, and so that's essentially where we are now. And I think now it's a council decision to determine which firm you would like to go with. And I'll turn it over to the manager for anything else that you may like to.
Well, let me say this, and I don't want to get ahead or behind.
Okay.
But I think when I say this, we find out. Do we not decide what we needed, what we're going to do, or what we're going to build, or who we're going to move before we pick this architect firm, because, I mean, I don't know that it'd make a difference, but it could. And I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse or whatever, but I'm just saying, if we're gonna build all this, yes, we need to pick one. If we're not gonna build all this, there's no point in doing all that, and that's my opinion now.
And that's a great point. Actually, the purpose of this, what the architectural firm would do in this would be basically to conduct an analysis to determine what the needs are of the senior center, the police department, the fire administration, determine what those needs are, and then determine which building would best meet those needs, and then make a recommendation back as to, in other words, we wouldn't be hiring them now to design the building. We'd be hiring them to just look at the.
Tell us what should go where.
Exactly. Look
And
at
also-
what we got and make a-
Initially, we had already decided that we were gonna put someplace, we were gonna put the police department in one building, fire department in another building. When we met with the architects, they told us that that probably wouldn't work because of the new laws, and you have to make it for an emergency services building. It has to be a certain different code. So that's something right there that we didn't even know. So we need to have somebody
That's why-
that's gonna tell us exactly what it is that we can do and come up with something like that.
They told me last time, you can't put the police in the in-car
Right.
building.
Right.
But I can vote to put another agency in that building and move the police from here to there and put it over here. That's why I need to know who's going where before I hire an architect. I mean, I didn't go that deep, but let's just go ahead and get deep with it. I don't know who's going where and why and when, but we're gonna hire an architect, tell us to put who where, and when we get through, that's not gonna be our decision. We know we can't put the police department in Quad Journal, they told us that. Why do they need to come back and tell me that? I already know that.
Well, I think that, your two companies, there's some pros on both sides. You got one that's a local company, the second one has done
That's,
a lot of this kind of work. He's done 300 some buildings.
well, are you gonna
And
design
the
a
other
police
one-
department?
Well, regardless, if you're going to renovate or build a new police department, you still need to get the one that's, we still gotta choose somebody that's gonna have the experience and the background to be able to do it.
Well, I might be interested in one over the other if we're gonna do this or that. If we're gonna build a police department, I might be hanging one way. We're not gonna do that, I'm gonna hang another way. I can,
I think we were going to, the initial,
Okay,
we
go ahead and hire.
were going to look at seeing what we could do, if we could do it. We haven't decided whether we could do it yet or not. That's why we're
Write
here
this
today.
down. The bottom line is, if I'm understanding right, we're gonna go ahead and choose the architect, which I don't have a problem with up to a point. We're gonna hire the architect, to come in here and tell us where to put what.
We don't have a price yet either, so we need to
Well,
have
that's
the
what I'm
prices.
talking about. I mean, we're gonna have the ultimate decision on who's going where. And we know that police is not going to the in-car journal, they're going to work. That's already one eliminated, they don't have to tell me about that again. That's what I'm talking, that's what I'm really saying without having to go through a 30-minute spiel of why we don't
Well,
need to
if
do
you leave the
that.
police department where they are, you're still gonna have to do renovations to that building. There's still gonna be some things that you're gonna have to do, same thing.
I understand that, I understand that. But do you know which architect you want for that?
That's what we're talking about today.
Let me make a comment.
Go ahead.
If we move the senior center to the Inquiry Building,
Do you need an architect to tell you to do that?
well, you will need an architect.
To tell you how to build a building, not to
No,
tell you
the
to
building's
build it.
already built.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm just hypothetical. If you move the fire department where the senior center was, you couldn't do that till the Inquiry Journal building and the senior center was finished. If you ended up leaving the police department where they were and rehabbing that would be the last. So you really talking about a 3-year scale.
I haven't talked to Ron or any of them, so I'm kind of shooting from the hip, and my mind could be changed. But right now, it's shooting from the hip. I think we'll take the senior building, the EJ building, put the senior center in. That'll give them 3 times the space they got right now. Take the fire administration, move them to the senior building. That'll give them double the space they got. Take the PD, give them the entire building. And some point down the road, when I say some more point, I'm talking about, it could be 1 year, could be 2 years, look at building a new police department. That'll do 2 or 3 things. That'll split this up for money-wise. We're talking about $15, $16, $17 million. Yeah, I mean, if you go out there right now and put it in the pot. Okay, you can move the senior building, if that's what we do now. I'm not saying that. If we move the senior building to the Inquirer Journal, give them 3 times the space. That'll be the only thing that we have to pay in this budget year. If they had it today, they would not be, they would not be through for the budget year. Then that's gone and out, and we're talking into a new budget.
What about, Larry, have you did any, analysis on, if we borrowed X number of dollars, how we gonna pay it back?
We have, yes, done some analysis. We've got probably about a 5-10 minute presentation that Lisa could provide you that kind of covers soup to nuts. I mean, the short answer is we've got a number of obligations that are looming, and year over year forecasted the requirements for capital requirements that it's making future budgets real tight.
That's why I was saying, if you do it, if you,
Excuse me.
oh, no, you're fine. I'm just saying, if you do this, if you even do this plan, I'm not saying that's what we need to do. This is what I'm saying. If we do that, we only got one project in this budget that he's talking about. So we don't need to talk about $15 million. We need to talk about whatever it costs to renovate one building in this budget. And then we can move to the other whatever in the next budget. I'm not saying we need to wait that long. I'm just saying if you do this, the Inquirer Journal building is not gonna be ready until next budget year anyway.
Well, we haven't even got approval on the Brownsville yet, so.
Well, we okay on the Inquirer Journal building, Brownfield, yeah. That's out of that Brownfield that we've been dealing with.
No, they were trying to put it in the Brownsville.
So we're clear, am I not correct? The Inquirer Journal building,
The amendment is pending.
Wait a minute, let the attorney answer that.
yeah.
The amendment is pending for the EJ building. So
Okay.
hopefully it will be clear in the next month or so, but it's still pending. So we haven't purchased the building until the amendment goes through.
Okay, well, that puts us right back where we're at today. We're still right where we're at.
Well, you know, the thing and Larry gave us a straight answer, and that is right now, we still got obligations, we are running tight. What I don't wanna do is ever put the city in a situation
No, me
that if
no.
this country's in a world of crap right now, and it could go to hell, and excuse the language, but hell in a handbasket in a hurry. And if it does, and we're overextended, then we got issues, and those issues could bring about laying off people, cutting services. Maybe we won't, but I always like to lean on the safe side, and I think that your idea with right now doing the senior building, and then when that's done, then we'll make the decision on the other.
Well, you know, if we wanted to, well, we want to do all the projects. And if we wanted to, we can't do it today because you can't do it one at a time. If we do the Inquirer building, and that would be in one budget that we could do without raising taxes, and I'm not gonna vote to raise a penny taxes to do this because we could do it in increments. This number one, if that's the way we go, time it's refurbished and ready to go, we're in a new budget year. We couldn't do these other two if we wanted to because we don't have the time. So they's in a new budget. We can move in the new budget year on this. We'll know more where we at. We'll know more about finances. That's what he said. We titled it so and we can do this in the steps and never put anybody behind. And at some point, when I say some point, I don't know if that's a year, 18 months, but look at a new PD. At some point, we're gonna have to do that. But if the fire moves out and we give them the whole building, they can limp through a period of a year or 2 years. I would think.
What do you think, Larry?
Question, comment?
Well, the mayor asked for questions or comments. I don't want to interrupt the manager. If you have something you want to interject here, I'm perfectly willing to listen.
Yes, go right ahead.
I think the projects are somewhat very complex undertaking. I think it will cost a substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
What's a substantial amount of money? I mean, there's 10 to 20 million,
Yeah.
just, throwing out numbers. That probably surpasses what we could do any fiscal year without looking at some form of mixing fund balance, savings from year over year, unspent monies and debt, and possibly sacrificing or deferring programs or projects that are on the board right now. Any and all those things is what I would, if the board said, we're gonna do this, and that's what I would do.
Okay, let me get back to one thing here that I think might be misinterpreted to some degree. When these committees began to undertake this and the staff was presented with this challenge, and they decided that they really didn't have the expertise or the knowledge to complete them, and they suggested that we might look to some professional to help us. And so that's what we did. So we sent this out to the RFQ. Now, if I'm not mistaken, is Brian in the room?
No, he's at a conference, or he's at a training session. Sorry.
Okay. What we are discussing here today is not the completion of all these projects. What we're here to discuss, possibly decide upon today is, do we merely want to enter into an agreement with a professional that could help us determine what our needs are for our existing and or future building projects for these three departments? And then in turn, come up with some idea about approximate cost.
And I would add, and the degree that any one of the existing buildings
Could be
will
used
meet
for-
those needs.
Right.
In terms, specifically fire functions, police functions,
Right.
specifically.
And I believe I asked this question of Brian in the committee meeting, and I believe I was told by Brian, I want to correct this if it was mistaken by me, and that we could not ask these people what the expense of this would be. We were merely there to discuss, to listen to their qualifications, and to see if one was better or worse than the other one in qualification, and we would decide that. And we could not ask them what the price was, that the price would be determined after we had decided which company to choose. Is that correct?
That's essentially
And that's the way
correct.
it has to be.
We determine this level of sophistication and skills, qualifications that we want to undertake the project, or the design project. And once we've selected a firm, then we begin negotiating. If we're unable to come to terms that we like, we can suspend and go in a different direction.
Right. No expense to us at that point.
Correct.
Yeah.
I
I think that's we need to reduce this back down to where we are now. I don't think that we've only got 15 minutes, and there's no need in expending the whole 15 minutes on future discussion with this, for what I'm concerned. What I do see that we have this need, and would I like to see some professional give me some direction? The answer, in my opinion, is yes. I don't think, and as the mayor has said, we're not going to have to decide on any of this stuff, even in the next 6 months, because both these people already told us that it would take at least that long to complete this study. So nothing is going to be done with any building in the next 6 months. It's going to take them that long just to come up with the plan. Then we're going to have to negotiate the price with them, and then if they can't meet that need, whatever our budget's willing to, which I can't believe would be a lot of money just to do the initial, this phase. Now, this is not designing a building. This is not telling you how many, what it should look like from the outside or anything else. This is just deciding, do these people truly, does the police, fire, and senior citizen center merely have a need? And if they do, what that need is, how big that building should be, where it should be, et cetera, et cetera.
I could go along with the architects on that. Based upon what Larry's told me and what Bobby said, I think the only thing in the pot to start with would be moving the senior center because of our budget. But I could agree to go ahead and bring the architects on to tell us what shape the old senior buildings in and the present fire and police is, what their capabilities of using. I don't have a problem with that. But I do think Larry did a good job in advising us that we do not want to jump in a hole.
No.
Oh, I agree. And
So, who wants to make a motion on an architect? If we're gonna move that way, that makes sense.
Let me ask, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Were you about to give us the two possible architects that you considered? Yeah, it was in your packet, they had the We had it at Public Safety and General Services, and they had the two companies, and they had their qualifications in the packet, and so we were supposed to go
One was
over
from
that.
Gastonia and one was from.
One's local.
I could, if the board would
Like
like.
I said, we had, and there were pros. We had one that was local, but you had one that had a lot of experience making in those public safety type buildings. Now, if you're going to just do one at a time and then hire one architect and then do something else and hire another architect, which is what I think you're getting at, Mayor, I don't know if that's the way we want to go. Maybe we need to just go ahead and table this and talk about it some more. Apparently, we haven't talked about it enough. But the one thing is that we hired architects is because we all over here think that we know the best way to build a police department. We all think we know how to build a fire department. We all think we know how to build a senior center. Well, that ain't my area of expertise, and it's not yours or yours or yours or yours.
At no point did I say that.
That's why we
I have
need to
not
hire an
said that.
architect.
I have not said that.
I
And I got
understand.
some stuff.
I make a motion that we table it. And I'll second.
Okay, now, I don't have.
Let me say, well, I'm not going to talk here, we got a first and second, but I.
What's our next move now that we're going, if we take it? We gotta,
Well, we got a motion and a second,
uh-huh.
and call it for questions or comments. Anybody got a question or comment before I
Well, the
get to mine?
question is, what is our next move? Because we need to move forward.
We
on
need to
this.
have another discussion, so we'll need to put it to another meeting so that we can discuss it, because we're running out of time
Well,
here.
all I said was, and all I said, I want to say this, I'm going to say it into the camera. I don't think anything that I said from first to end would implicate or state that I knew how to build a police department. The only thing I said is how much more square footage they would be gaining, and if you're gonna do it one at a time and all at one time. If you do it all at one time, you're talking about $16 million. If you're gonna do it one at a time, and there ain't no way to get more than one in this budget, and I just said that.
Bob, you said you built the eighth one in the world.
I could do that probably. But anyway, I don't have a problem tabling it. I'm not ready to move anyway.
Why don't we do this, Mary or Bobby?
Sure.
Why don't we have a powwow on a Saturday and talk about, what we're gonna do?
Y'all pick any Saturday you want. Y'all pick y'all Saturday.
You're not coming?
Not on Saturday, I'll be glad
Back
to
to the
come.
strategic planning meeting like we've done
We
today.
do another strategic planning meeting, I'm not done.
strategic plan.
Right.
Maybe on a night that doesn't have a council meeting.
Okay, my motion is that we table
Well,
this
it
to the
could be
next
done the next
strategic.
council meeting at 5 o'clock, as far as I'm concerned, but
My motion is we take it to the next strategic council meeting, and we'll talk about it then. That way, we'll talk about it, we'll have time to review the material. I don't think Ms. Anthony has had a chance to review the material, so let her have a chance to do that, and then we'll discuss it some more.
And again, just keep in mind now, we're not trying
I understand
to
that.
design
I
or
understand.
build or pay for 3 structures. We're only selecting professionals to help us come up with the thought of looking in that direction. And it's my opinion that this really ain't gonna be millions of dollars, okay? This is not gonna be anywhere near approaching that money. And at that point, all we have is an answer about the size, the needs, the place to put it, et cetera, et cetera. Then you're gonna make a decision about, is he gonna design it or we gonna build it?
It's gonna be done in phases.
Well, the only thing you'll design or build will be a police department. You're not gonna design or build anything else. You might,
Could I suggest, if you're interested in carrying this over to the next strategic, that this meeting not be adjourned and carried over, and we set up a strategic for the 15th, your next board meeting? We don't have one set up right at this point, but if they don't,
I'd say that'd be the best
all right,
thing.
we have a motion and a second.
Are they?
All in favor for the 15th? Any opposed? So that'll be set for the 15th.
Thank you, brother.
Y'all write this down somewhere and see if that ain't what the architect's gonna say. The only thing he's gonna design is the police
Okay,
department. I'm with you.
did you want to hold discussion on the other item and carry it over?
We don't go as far as we can go.
Do you want to go do it now, or do you want to do it at 6 o'clock?
It don't make any difference what the council.
Lisa, how long is it going to take you to do
Wait a
this
minute,
presentation?
we got one more.
More
don't
than
we?
5 minutes.
Well, item 3, let's see what, if
Well, that's what I just asked.
if
how
we
long
run
it's
out of
gonna
time, we've got 6 minutes, we run out of time, we'll move it.
Okay.
Item
We could
3.
go to the 15th also, if it had to.
Yeah,
It could go.
yeah, we're gonna do this the day or the night, we're gonna get through with this one. Item 3, 2 men in a truck, how long is this gonna take?
That's what I was
Take
trying to
just
ask.
5 minutes, but I think there'll be discussion.
We might do it at 6.
All right, let's just move it to the council.
We're gonna move it at 6.
All
We'll
right,
do
that
that.
would be better.
We'll do that the second.
No, you talking about tonight?
We're gonna do it right
We're
now,
gonna do
6
it.
o'clock.
Right.
We're gonna move it into
Yeah,
council.
yeah.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
How much?
No, no,
Jared?
No,
You
not,
need to
we don't adjourn strategic.
You want to recess this until
Recess.
the November 15
At 5.
meeting. November 15 to 5, because it's
Yeah.
either that or you create a special meeting.
Yeah,
Okay,
And-
well, I was, okay, I guess.
Well,
I
we'll
should-
recess to the 15th.
Yes.
Good deal. Thank you.
Okay.